for the truth. Here's what I wanna say to you. Try them for yourself. You will see why I say every day just get sweet. Just get sweeter. Oh, I wouldn't make it. And you know I won't let go. Every day. Oh, I wouldn't make it. Y'all ready for this? Every day you get much better. Every day you get much better to me. And every day you get much sweeter. And love your name. And with our whole heart we'll praise Him always. And with our whole heart we'll praise Him, break it down for Him. Oh, sweeter. And with my whole world stand up. Oh, praise the Most High. Greetings, 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 greetings. I am King Clifford Jefferson, descendant of Godfrey the Fifth Caliban Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. It is January the 23rd, 2026, which is equivalent to the birth year 2976. I greet you in the name of King Edgar, the corporation soul. I greet you in the name of myself, the king, the corporation soul. I greet you as heirs, successors, as part of the corporation soul. I greet you in the name of my wife. I greet you in the name of all those who are striving to get an understanding of what it is that we are called to do. Greetings to you all. This is part 2 of what remains of the system when it collapses. Potential heirs. Understand that what remains of the system when it collapses is what I have prepared for you, what our ancestors have prepared for you. If you want to know, please understand, all entries are free, but obligation is not. Once again, all entries are free, but obligation is not. Okay? All those who are interested, please leave your name, your number, as well as your address in the comment box. All right? Let me know what house you're from, and we can start the initiations into this illustrious monastery that has been secularized in the modern day where it's applicable to be able to regain our lost estate. And with that, we get started with this marvelous lecture. Hold on for 1 minute. Greetings again. Greetings to those who follow the Third Typical English Church of England. We don't know who you are, but once again, as stated, if you want to become members, which is free, but obligation is not, please leave your name, your address, and your number, and the noble house that you descend down from, and make yourself a part of this noble movement. All right? Make yourself a part of what we call the King's World Court. Let's get started with this marvelous lecture. Part 2. What remains of the system when it collapses? Part 2. For potential inheritors. You are the inheritors. Okay, let's come here. Our mission. This is our mission as a result of our capacity as a corporation soul. Okay? Historically, we call it a world court, all right, or antenna court, all right, going all the way back to the ecclesiastical and nature where it derived from, but as a result of it being secularized, we call it a corporation soul. All right? And we titled it the Third Typical English Church. And this is our mission statement. Okay? The Third Typical English Church of England. This is the day of resurrection. This is the day of the resurrections of all the lost souls and minds of the people. Okay? This is the preparation for the resurrection of all the lost souls and minds of the people in their natural capacity. Okay? This assures you that in your corporate capacity, all right, in your corporate capacity, you have an inheritance, okay, that was reserved and preserved by the crown, okay, the crown, now known as a corporation soul, okay. So our story and our mission for the Third Typical English Church of England. Our story begins from the minds of men of olden times, which have been forgotten by their heirs and successors of this day and age. Our journey begins in our minds of our past. We call this time immemorial, which will determine our present and future lives. We, the King's Bench, have returned for our own heirs and successors, declaring and proclaiming that your salvation is your own responsibility. Once again, entry is free, obligation is not. We, the English, Anglo-Saxon, Berber tribes, have been scattered abroad what we anciently call ancient Albion, stripped of our nobility, royalty, civil status, key word, civil status of our peers, okay, who have been long forgotten as a result of our continuous efforts to forget our past rather than remember them. No longer can we as a people accept a future without past events to build upon the framework, the system, the structure, okay, to stabilize that future. This can only be accomplished with a past built on nobility, royalty, civil status of our peers, from which we descended down from time immemorial. Our mission here at the Third Typical English Church of England is to remind our people that returning back to the fork in the road that path that led you to that separation, and get further directions on how to stay on the short but narrow path headed back home. Separation, narrow path, that is key to understanding your responsibility, which is free to everyone if you can follow the premises of order. Let's continue. In our religious capacity, we have an obligation which is different from our natural capacity, which is free to do whatever we want. Okay? So this is why in our corporate capacity, we had to create uniform rules and laws to govern us as a royal family. This is very important to understand. Very important to understand. This is why we have to look at our purpose and intent, okay, based upon our corporate capacity. What was it created for? All right? Based upon our future, present concerns, okay? Based upon civil protection, okay? Historically, we have knowledge of self. But how does that fit into the civil equation, okay? All right? Which, if, according to the process today, the courts consider historical, ancient, novelty arguments, all right, that does not fit into the system as a result of the law that was considered ecclesiastical, canon, religious, spiritual, all right? Those laws have to do with God, okay? Divine, divinity, spiritual, okay? Where secularized laws have to deal with men, okay? Humans, okay? People. Very important to understand that. There needs to be a connection between the ecclesiastical, canon, religious, spiritual, with the modern law, which is we know is civil, criminal, or equitable. Okay? Very important that we comprehend that. Not just in your corporate capacity, but in your natural capacity. Because the system, you're not dealing with people in their natural capacity. You're dealing with people in their corporate capacity. Okay? They're not being taught. They're being, it's being learned. Okay? As a result of the rules, the policies, the process of how the system was structured. You don't ask any questions. Okay? So you are a participant in the system. Very important to understand this. The whole system is ran by natural people acting in their corporate capacity under some form of what we talked about in part one, a belief, all right, an assumption, which according to them, it's considered to be a fact. All right? But a fact under a assumption, which is a belief, something to be true, upon review of the courts under ultravirus, it falls on a legal presumption because something else proves the presumption or the assumption or the belief is in fact wrong. That only leaves a legal fiction, something that's false, that's accepted as true, even though it's not. Very totally different than the latter I just mentioned. We defined them yesterday. You need to watch part one. All right? So we don't have to rely on belief, assumptions, that are considered facts. Because we understand that in the eyes of law, they are considered legal presumptions. And a legal presumption can be proven wrong based upon a legal fiction, something that's false, accepted in law as a fact, based upon carrying out its purpose of why the fiction was created. Okay? That's the framework. That's the structure. Okay? That's the unseen. The authority without a voice. Okay? The procedural belief. The architecture of that trust. The premises of order. This is the key. All right? Let's look at each and every one of our capacity as corporate people that were preserved by our ancestors acting in their corporate capacity. Okay, very important. I'm going to show you what our King Edgar brought to the table, which I am the personification of through our charter, which is a statutory enumerated right that we have in our corporate capacity, which preserves the historical understanding that we have that was preserved from ecclesiastical, now known today as civil law. Okay? Very important. Civil law. As you can see, our capacity as a society, all right, our corporate capacity as a society, it's called a corporation soul. Statutory to preserve under New Jersey revised statute. Okay, so we have a statutory interest in the capacity that our ancestors had. Okay, which is on the record, notice to all, notice to the world, which now is different from your natural capacity. Now places you in your corporate capacity, because the word corporate also means what? Body. Okay? Everybody hold that thought. Right? What you're seeing here is called the record. What you're looking at right now is called the record. Okay? The recording is right there. The record. Okay? First in record, first in line. First in time, first in right. First in time, first in right. Very important to understand that. The record. Okay? Type of document. A religious society. A corporation so. Under New Jersey Revised Statute, this is civil protection. All right? By the founders. All right? This is the framework. This is the structure. All right? This is the structure. All right? Moving from physical to spiritual and the ecclesiastical understanding. This is called the rapture. Okay? The rapture. Because in your physical body, you're subject to encompasses such as death, physical injury. But in your corporate capacity, you're not. It's preserved physically and spiritually because it was secularized. As above, so below. Okay? And your estate is protected because it is an inheritance passed from you to your descendants. From as of this point, as a result of the record, because you no longer exist in your natural capacity as members or officers or staff, because you're acting in your corporate capacity. Everything you do from this point on and your actions on earth should be in your corporate capacity. We know a corporation soul is held by a natural person. Okay? Two different legal capacities. Very important to understand that as members. You see a section here for deeds. So for that, you must have an interest in property. All right? That can only be preserved by secular law, which is civil law. Okay? And the law that governs property. Okay? So you have to tie one statute dealing with your corporate capacity to your capacity to own property. Okay? Very important. And that depends upon a record. You see the lot and block number. Right? Lot and block number, municipality consideration, mailing address to grantee. All right? Very important. This understanding will come later. I'm going to go till 2:30, and then I'll do part 3. I'll do part 3. The Third Temple English Church of England. The Third Temple English Church of England, king and heirs and successors. A corporation so. As part of our church, we historically have to understand our ecclesiastical nature, all right, as natural people, and how to protect that historical ecclesiastical nature as being spirits, all right, now manifested here on earth, and as a result of that is a result of the secularization of that ecclesiastical or canon law or spiritual law or religious law, whatever you want to say it, because remember there's a separation of church and state. So if there's a separation of church and state, there's no way to protect that religious, ecclesiastical, spiritual law within the law based upon the process that has been set up only if you're acting within that capacity that has been bestowed upon you by which was changing from ecclesiastical to secular, which was preserved in civil law. Very important. That's called secularism. The undersigned, each with the capacity to contract, hereby execute and acknowledge this certificate of incorporation for the purpose of forming a religious non-profit in accordance with the statutory legislative enactment which preserves our rights under the statute, which gives us our capacity to act as kings, heirs, and successors. All right, as secularized in the capacity as the law provides. Okay, so we have to be careful about how we present ourselves in modern day in lieu of protecting our historical origin of why we established our corporation or organization in the first place. Okay? Very important. Because remember, entry is free, but obligation is not. The name of the religious corporation should be the Third Temple English Church of England, King and Successors. King, heirs, and successors. The physical address of this will be our present location, okay, which we reside now. Business type, very important, because this also denotes to your interest in property, which is the property that you're now in possession of, and your natural capacity, all right, notwithstanding to your corporate capacity to own property as well, all right, but in your corporate capacity relation to you being associated with the crown, i.e. the corporation sole, because now you are now the grantee and the grantor would become the corporation sole. Okay, you must understand that if you are to regain your lost estate. A corporation sole is a legal entity consisting of a single sole. This is called what we call in ancient times, or times when in the medieval it was called a centralized system. The system is no longer function under a centralized system. Now it has been decentralized. Okay, very important to understand that. So we have to live within the system. We have to live within the framework. We have to live within the administration that's active today, based upon the order that has been set for the system to run. Okay, and it's going to continue to run based upon the inherited assumptions about the system. Okay, which needs to be corrected. It needs to be changed. So this is a corporation sole of a royal peculiar, the crown. A corporation sole is a legal entity consisting of a single sole incorporated office occupied by a single sole natural person. So when I'm acting in my natural capacity, I have rights just as a corporate person acting in their corporate capacity. The person don't change. Okay? Still the same person. Okay? Just a different capacity. This framework, this structure allows corporation, often religious corporations, because remember it's been secularized now, meaning that there's a separation of church and state. So now if you're not part of the church, you're part of the state. And when you're part of the state, you're acting in your natural capacity. Well, you can believe whatever you want, but according to them, you're acting in your natural capacity, and your natural capacity, you are a part of their system. Okay? Because you have no other capacity other than you being a natural person, and majority of us argue our interest in the state and our natural capacity. Does that make sense to us? So this structure allows corporation, often religious corporations or commonwealth governments, to pass without interruption. This is called continuity, from one office holder to the next. Given positions legal continuity, there go that word, with subsequent official office holders having identical powers and possessions to their predecessors. This is the legal capacity or corporate capacity of an office holder. Okay? Whether it's a decentralized or centralized system, there must be an office holder. Okay? Article 3. business purpose. Not just the president, but office holders and members. When you enter and become part, then you're obligated to follow the mechanism to keep the mechanism functioning. Okay? Very important. Article 3, business purposes. It means for orderly transfer. Order. Hear that word, order. All right? Order means continuity. And means for orderly transfer of ecclesiastical property. There you go. That's the spiritual property granted to you by fictions. Okay? Fictions. Based upon a assumption that you believed in that was in fact a fact until proven otherwise. All right? That you claimed it was the truth until proven otherwise. All right? The only way you can prove it otherwise is to establish a legal fiction because they know it's in fact false. But for the purpose of its the reason why it was established, it becomes a legal fact that cannot be rebutted in a court of law. Because now you're in the king's court. Now you're in the royal court in your corporate capacity and not your natural capacity. You are a part of the whole. You are now protected. Not just you, but your property. That understanding will come later. So it means for orderly transfer of ecclesiastical property, serving to keep the title within the denomination of religious society, in order to keep the religious property from being treated as an estate of the vicar of church. Now you have to understand ecclesiastical and canon law, which we will throughout these lessons. The property was titled to the office of that natural person acting not in his natural self or natural person, but in his corporate capacity as an individual. A corporation, so the crown is the legal embodiment of the executive, legislative, judicial, governance, and the monarchy of each commonwealth realm. These has been now secularized. So it's up to us as members of the corporation, so I being your president, to make sure that the system that's now called the executive, legislative, and judicial recognize our rights according to our capacity under revised statute 60:1-28. Rights saved under the Charter of Great Britain, saved from repeal, and act to incorporate trustees of religious society for property held in corporation and place thereof, because the state or the United States is in fact a corporation. They're not acting in their natural capacity, they're acting in their corporate capacity, what gives them the ability to be able to do what they do, because it's a legal presumption that is a fact in law that they assume is true until otherwise proven. Does that make sense to everyone? I hope so. Now we go to Article 4, which is the last obligation that not just I, but you as potential inheritors must follow. These monarchies are united by personal union of their monarch, president, but there are independent states. All right, this is a decentralized government, okay, versus a centralized government. The concept of the crown developed first in England as a separation of the literal crown and property of the kingdom from the person and personal property of the monarch, okay? Very important. Now we have Article 4. Each and every member who are members of the corporation, so, all right, in our ancient ecclesiastical time, it was called the crown, okay? It was called the crown, all right? We don't call it that no more because to the courts, that's a broader argument that the court don't want to argue. Why? Because the procedural process that has been set up, which the courts will only construe narrowly, okay? Very important to understand that, all right? They keep that door cracked open just a little bit so that you can slide through, all right? That's the procedure or the process that has been set up for us today. Magna Carta Clause 1, the liberties of the English Church. Now, this is an ancient, historical, religious, political civil law established by the church. Okay? Very important. This is the Magna Carta Clause 1. The liberties of the English Church, first, that we have granted to God by this present charter, to God, okay? That authority without a voice, okay? The owner of it all. We don't own nothing. We're just caretakers of it, okay? We have granted to God. This is called a gift, all right? A transfer, a bequestment, okay? From you to God, the immortal, okay? Who've been here from time immemorial. And by this present charter, okay, have confirmed. The charter is the instrument that you have. Is called a deed. Is a gift to the crown, which authorizes charters. Once you gift it to the crown is able to charter it back to you, and you are able to benefit from crown property. Okay, free and clear of any encumbrances that originated as a result of Title 46. Okay, a preserving statutory interest and property that the legislator has deemed valid. Operative law. Okay, operative law. How many understand what I'm saying? How many can comprehend this language? I'm not talking like I used to talk when we did our other classes. This is the new day and time now. So it's in the Magna Carta, the liberties of the English Church. We'll call ourselves the Third Temple English Church of England, modernly, that we have granted to God. Okay? God is immortal. This is a corporation. So when we as natural people grant what we have as natural people to God, the immortal, the corporation, the corporate body, it is his. And it's him who protects it from any hand that are not within that corporate body. Because that will be considered outside of the scope of bounds of your authority. Okay? Your corporate capacity. Okay? Now that's corporation as well as natural people. All right? So the Magna Carta Clause, the liberties of English Church, first, that we have granted to God. So it ain't God granted to you, it's you granting it to God. And by this present charter, have confirmed for us and our heirs in perpetuity, that means everyone come after you, that the English Church shall be free. The English Church represents the crown and the physical, okay? Based upon the ecclesiastical now becoming secular, and secular protects that which do civil law, and civil law protects religious freedom, religious rights, religious capacity to own property, sue and be sued in the court of law in regards to preserving that property, okay? So it says the English Church shall be free and shall have its rights undiminished and its liberties unimpaired as English kings and heir successors' duty and allegiance. You hear that? Obligation to restore the peerage, all right, trial by jury, life and history of the English Anglo-Saxon Berbers, English Church, our customs, laws, traditions, religious belief, back to the time immemorial here in America. Commemorate our saints, martyrs, and our past kings and queens, whether you want to call them presidents, vice presidents, etc., and restore the mysteries. Okay, you hear this? The mysteries, the fiction of the starter of it all, King Edgar the Peaceful, known to us as Jesus Christ. Very important you understand that. Why? Let's go here. Of course, I have to revisit this. Belief. What is belief? Just because you believe in something don't make it true. You don't have to believe in the Third Temple English Church of England. It's a fact. It's a legal fact. All right? We have a charter. Okay? We have a charter. Belief. Synonym of belief. A state or habit of mind in which trust or confidence is placed in some person or a thing. Very important. Are you still stuck in that? If you have a belief, then this is actually called a presumption. A belief is a presumption. Let's look at presumption. Before we look at presumption, let's look at assumption. Assumption. Because you have assumption and pre-assumption. Pre-assumption is worse than assumption. Okay? Pre-assumption is worse than assumption. Assumption means a taken to or upon oneself. That's one. Two, the act of laying a claim to or take a possession of something. Or three, assuming that something is true. A fact or statement such as a proposition, axiom, postulate, or notion taken for granted. 4. Taking up a person into heaven. Very important. 5. Taking over another's debts. 6. Arrogance and pretension. That is what? Presumption. The definition of presumption. Pardon, not presumption, assumption. To assume. How many of you out there assume? Be honest. How many of you are assuming right now that what you put all your trust in is in fact the truth? So hope you God. How many of you are? Because now you have a decision to make if you're going to be a part of this church. Not just hearing what the church is saying to you, but are you going to be compliant to what the church is saying to you by becoming members? Because outside of the church, you have no protection from the church. Okay? All right? So now you can put all your belief and assumptions away based upon your presumptions, your pre-assumptions. Let's define that. Belief, assumptions, now presumptions. Remember, leave your name, your address, and your phone number. All right? If you want to become a potential inheritor. Presumption. Leave it in the comment box. Okay? Presumption is an inference the law requires when certain facts are present. Most presumptions are what? Rebuttable. Meaning they can be overturned if the opposing evidence is strong enough. Others are conclusive and must be accepted as true even if the contrary evidence exists. Now, in lieu of what I just showed you about our incorporation as a legal fiction at law, something that's fiction but is accepted as a fact and is known to be true even though it's false, as a result of the purpose and intent and mission that it was created to do, was bridge a gap from the old to the new. Okay? Very important. A presumption is an inference. The law, now we're talking about law. We ain't talking about religion because there's a separation of church and state. So we're dealing with that law, your belief, your assumption, and that fact that you believe and that you assume is in fact true. All right? In law, it says a presumption, pre-assumption, is an inference the law requires. Now you're in the court of a whole different ball game. This is what we call the world court. In ecclesiastical time, now I just called you a regular court, okay, a secular court. A presumption is an inference the law requires when certain facts are present. Most presumptions are rebuttal, meaning that they can be overturned if opposing evidence is strong enough. Evidence is put on what? The record. The record. And if that evidence that put on the record is strong enough, then the presume or the belief in those who trusted in that fact are now proven wrong. The only way they can be proven wrong because of conclusive evidence based upon a legal fiction that must be accepted as true, even if its contrary evidence exists. I didn't make that up. That's the definition of what? A legal fiction. Let's look at it before I move forward with the class. Legal fiction. A legal fiction is an assumption, you hear this, brothers and sisters? An accepted of something as a fact by a court. Because now you're talking about a court of law, not a church, okay? In the church, you can believe whatever you want to, okay? But in law, no, that ain't gonna work. It has to be already recognized in the system and become part of the system, which is based upon the process that the system allows for parties in lieu of their protection and lieu of their religious belief. Okay? So a religious belief that's civilly protected. Okay? And that's only through a legal fiction, which is an assumption and acceptance of something as fact by court, although it may not be true, to allow the rule, you hear that? The rule to operate or be applied in a manner that differs from the original purposes while leaving the letter of the law unchanged. Reason for creating a legal fiction can vary, but legal fictions are typically designed to achieve convenience, consistency, continuity through equity or justice. Did you hear that? So we're talking about declaratory injunctive relief. Okay? Declaratory and injunctive relief. No historical talk, no religious talk, no dogma, no ideology, okay? No novelty, okay? We must leave that out of our arguments in order for us to exist after the collapse of the system, which we call What Remains, which is the title of my book. For example, where a court cannot exercise impersonum jurisdiction over a defendant, it can bring that defendant under its jurisdiction via quasi in rem. The latter is a formal personal jurisdiction that uses a defendant property to satisfy a claim against them. This is called an interest by way of an encumbrance. All right. It is a legal fiction because it treats the owner of the property as a defendant, although the subject of the suit is technically the property itself. Okay? So to them, you're not acting in your natural capacity and the system that you consider part of, or whether you observe the system or not, whether you work for a system or not, you're acting in your natural capacity, in your corporate capacity, you're not recognized in the system because it doesn't fit into their process. Okay? In their process, they are looking at you as a fiction, but a fiction that's dead in law because you have no what? Legal capacity to sue. Okay? You think you do, but you don't. Okay? All right? You don't. Another common legal fiction is legal personhood or corporate personhood in business law. Incorporation of business requires the creation of a legal fiction or corporate personhood so that the corporate could sue and be sued in the court of law. So this is what you have failed to do. Okay? You can't create your own corporation to overthrow the system because the system will not allow that. When you try to do that, that becomes an electrical signal, a red flag in the system to let you know that something outside the system is trying to alter the system, and this is where you get in trouble. Okay? Very important. So where do you put your trust? Because that's the last definition that we're going to read. Truth. What is truth? Truth. A noun. Truth. The body of real things, events, and facts. So fictions can become real. Fictions become real through the process of legalizing that fiction. Okay? Very important you understand that. Very important to understand that. Two, the state of being the case, a fact. Okay? A judgment, proposition, or idea that is true or accepted as true. The body of a true statement or proposition. 2a, the property of a statement of being in accord with facts or reality. Very important. Very important. All these definitions you should understand in regards to the four terms that I gave to you: belief, assumption, preassumption, truth, and legal fiction. You must understand those terms in light of what just said to understand what it is to make the next transition unto the resurrections of your conscious mind. Okay? Very important for you to understand that. All this was on behalf of who? King Edgar the Peaceful. And I'll close out on him, and I'll come with part 3. Matter of fact, I said I close at 2:30. All right, so I'll continue. King Edgar the Peaceful. Edgar, also known as Edgar the Peacemaker, right there behind me, look just like me. All right. Successorship. All right. The characteristics of King Edgar. Okay. Not natural, but corporate. Okay. Was a king of the English from 959 until his death in 975. He became king of all of England on his brother Edward's death. He was the younger son of King Edmund and his first wife Elgifu. A detailed account of Edgar's reign is what? Not possible. Not possible. Okay? So his life is a mystery. Okay? His life is a mystery. It's a fiction. Okay? Why? Why? Let's see. So it says, a detailed account of Edgar's reign is not possible because only few events were recorded by chroniclers and modernistic writers who were more interested in recording the activities of the leaders of the church. Very important why that statement was made. Because King Edgar set the tone for the leaders of the church. Okay? He set the standard for the leaders of the church. He set the procedure for the leaders of the church. He set the administrative process up for the leaders of the church, which is now called world courts or courts, okay, which are now called modern day judges, administrative officers, etc. Okay? Very important for you to latch on to what I'm saying to you. Remember, if it wasn't for the secularization of ecclesiastical and canon law, it would be, which is now called civil law or equitable law or criminal law, it would be uniform because back in our time there was no separation of what? Church and state. All right? Very important. Edgar mainly followed the political policies. You hear that? Political. So there was a government of its predecessors. That's the intent of a corporation soul. Okay? All right? That's the intent historically. All right? Of why we do what we do today. Statutorily. Okay? We don't have to go into a whole argument historically because the statute identifies that within the statute, and when courts review the statute, it has to be do what we call pari materia. Okay? Pari materia, which we'll talk about soon. Okay? Edgar mainly followed the political policies of its predecessors, but there were major changes in the religious sphere. Okay, the government known in the English Anglo-Saxon Berbers, because they were all Berbers, was called Witten or Wittenmont. When William the Conqueror invaded, it became the Career Regis, and then further on down the line, it became Parliament, what you now call Congress, which is made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives. Okay, the English Benedictine reform, which has strongly supported, which he strongly supported, became a dominant religious and social force. It is seen by historians as a major achievement and was accompanied by a literary and artistic flowering mainly associated with Ethelwood, Bishop of Winchester, and monasteries, aggressively acquired estates. You hear that? Estates, all right, from lay owners with Edgar's assistance, okay? Edgar's assistance, not in his natural capacity, but in his corporate capacity, okay, as the corporation soul, leading to disorder when he died and former owners sought to recover their lost property, sometimes by force. This is what's going to result after what remains of the system when the legitimacy of the system is restored, not just by me, but by you as heirs and are partakers of the system which keeps the inheritance alive, preserved by the legislation as preserved by our ancestors by secularization. You must understand how important I am, not just to you, but to the ancestors. Okay? Let's continue. Edgar's major administrative reform was the introduction of standardized coinage in the early 1970s to replace the previous decentralized system. He also issued legislative codes which mainly concentrated on what? Improving procedures for enforcement of the law. That is key. That's key right there. Y'all sleep on this. Edgar Major Administrative. This is the framework. This is the backbone. This is the structure. Okay? This is the what we call matrix. All right? Edgar's major administrative reform was to introduce, to present, to establish of a standardized coinage in the early 1970s to replace the previous decentralized system. He also issued legislative codes which mainly concentrated on improving procedures for enforcement of the law. For that, you need secularization, my brothers and sisters. All right? You need secularization. Let's look at these terms closely. What is secularism? 2:30. I got to close out and come with part 3. Secularism. Matter of fact, I don't think I'm gonna do another part three. I think I'll wait and do part three tomorrow. Okay, so I'll probably continue to till 2:30 or 3 o'clock. I'll decide if it's gonna be three, but right now it's 2:30. Secularism is the principle of seeking to conduct human affairs based on naturalistic considerations, uninvolved with religion. Did you hear that? So God is out of the equation. Okay? So if God is out of the equation, that means that everything is done without God's influence. Okay? Very important to understand that. All right? Very important to understand that. Presently, all right, we know back in King Edgar time, it wasn't no problem. All right? Because he was involved in the state as well as the religion. Okay? He was involved in both of them. All right? He was involved in church and state. He was involved in law and religion. Okay? To him, it wasn't no difference. To us, it should not be a difference. It's not the person, it's the capacity. We must understand it's not the person, it's the capacity. What capacity that you're acting in, for yourself itself or for a greater cause. Secularism is the principle of seeking to conduct human affairs based upon naturalistic considerations, uninvolved with religion. So your God don't count. It is most commonly thought as of separation of religion from civil affairs and the state. Who did this? Your founding fathers. Okay? And may be broadened to a similar position, seeking to remove or to minimize the role of religion in a public sphere. Did you hear that? So we're talking about broadness and narrowness. Okay? And according to law, the religious aspect is going to be looked at narrowly because they don't want to go into the argument broadly. Okay? Their system is not based upon that because of what? There's secularism in it. Okay? Very important for you to understand that just based upon the first definition. Now we can move forward. Now let's deal with decentralization and centralization. Let's define that so we can get into the meat and greedy. Okay? Now we know King Edgar reformed a decentralized system. That's what Wikipedia said. So we believe it, we assume it, presume that's a fact, and we trust in that fact because we trust in the architecture of the system. Okay? But no one really knows if it's in fact the truth, right? Because it can be tested. All right? It can be tested. So here we have the centralization versus decentralization. What's right? What's right for you? When it really matters. Just going to read a little bit from it, not much. Centralization and decentralization defined. That's what we want. Centralization and decentralization defined. It is important to start by being clear about what we mean by centralization. Centralization refers to the concentration of a management and decision-making power at the top of the organizational hierarchy for the purpose of coordinating financial, humans, and other business resources. In centralized organizations, strategic planning, goal setting, budgeting, and talent deployment are typically conducted by a single senior leader or leadership team. In contrast, in decentralized systems or organizations, formal decision making power is distributed across multiple individual teams. Right, so More decentralized. Oh, come on. Forgive me. More decentralized teams. It is notable that altogether centralization can involve the collocation of personnel. It does not have to. Centralization it does not have to. Centralization is more about where decisions get made rather than where people sit. Okay, so now you see the difference between centralization and decentralization as defined. Okay, leaders choose to centralize or decentralize their organizations for a variety of reasons, and certain benefits are associated with both centralized and decentralized models. We see King Edgar decentralize the previous system that was there and reinstituted an administrative procedural government that's still applicable now today. How we know it? Let's discuss it. Okay, so now I spend the next half hour talking about that. Let me go back to King Edgar real quick. Right here. Administration. All right. We want to look at what did King Edgar do in his legal capacity as a king, not in his natural capacity as a natural person. Because I'm pretty sure he would like to kick back like every one of us, all right, or go about our daily way, living our natural lives. Okay, he had bigger things on his mind. All right, he thought about his successors. Okay, I'm thinking about not just my successors. All right, I'm thinking about my predecessors. Okay, very important to understand why I do what I do, why we do what we do. All right, why the system is here to preserve what it is that we do. That is to stay within our capacity to preserve what the legislator has preserved in lieu of our statutory interests and seek nothing more than declaratory and injunctive relief based upon review ultravirus to make sure that those who are supposed to preserve our interests are acting within the scope of their authority as authorized by the statute. Okay? Very important that you comprehend what it is that I'm saying. Edgar became king of the whole England when Edward died on the 1st of October 959, and his former tutor, Ethelwerd, became one of the most powerful figures at court. He was probably at Edward's personal service as an advisor from 960 until 963, when King appointed him Bishop of Winchester. Dustin, who became Archbishop of Canterbury at the start of Edgar's reign, was diligent in attending court. You hear that? Court. And the historian Alan Thacker view, while Ethelwerd's characteristic context in his monotheistic empire, Dustin is the royal court. Dustin is the royal court. In the early 1970s, the leaders secular, here go that word, key word, secular magnates were Ethelwine, Ealdorman, and East Anglia. Ethelwerd's brothers and successors, Elfhere of Mercia, Osric of York, and Britannus of Essex. Okay? Very important to understand that they were secular clergy, okay? Secular clergy, but they were more in tune with the Benedictine monastery that was established through reform for the English church, okay? Very important. Then he goes into the charters. We have a charter, okay? All right, that statutory preserves our capacity under the charters as given by Great Britain, 16.1-28, which I'll show you in a second. The charters of 960 and the early 970s are similar and do not suggest political change in the period. But from the late 1960s, Northern Magnates were more regularly presented. We know what Magnus means. In 954, Edred had appointed Oslof, the ruler of Northumbria, territory of Bangberth, as the elderman of the whole of Northumbria following the expulsion of the Viking king of York, a Danish king, Eric Bloodaxe. Oslof did not own his power to southern English support, and when he died in the 960s, Edgar again divided Northumbria and appointed Oslic as elderman of York, southern Northumbria, increasing his control over the area, but he was not able to choose who held power in Bangberth. Okay, very, very, very important to understand that. Why? Because it comes up to the next term, royal court. Okay, royal court. What is a royal court? We must understand that. The Third Typical English Church of England, in the eyes of the historical sense, is a royal court. In modern day, we are a religious congregation. We are a religious family. We are a religious group. Okay, very important that you look at it from those eyes and those eyes only, because with those eyes, they're eyes of the unseen. Okay. Okay, they're the eyes of the unseen, the authority of the voice, the assumption that we inherited based upon why we here believe in the secular ecclesiastical law and to civil law by what we call procedural belief, believing and trusting in a system that's legitimate versus illegitimate, because we know the word order has nothing to do with truth, justice, what's correct, what's right or wrong. It only deals with what? The perseverance of continuity. So a royal court, often called simply a court. When the royal context is clear, it is extended to the royal household and a monarchy, now called the president and his cabinet. Okay? Not in a religious, ecclesiastical, spiritual sense, but as a civil, legal, state authoritative as authorized by the statute, written by man, and not laws written by God. Okay? We must understand the difference. Okay? A royal court, often called simply a court when the royal context is clear, is an extended royal household and monarchy, including all those who would regularly attend on a monarch or another central figure. Hence, the word court may also be applied to the coterie or senior members of nobility. Royal courts may have their seat in a designated place, several specific places, or be a mobile, i.e., an itinerant court. We already know what those terms mean, meaning that it moved from one place to another. All right, and the only reason why it would move is a result of what we call a state of emergency. Okay, a state of emergency. Let's get through this lesson, brothers and sisters. Let's get it. This brings in, do I want to go there now? Let's go there. Now, majority of us complain about this very problem about the estates that were religiously promised from God, but there is no way to properly transfer that conveyance that was promised from God in the present day. Why? Because you're not in the proper capacity. All right, i.e., your corporate capacity. But there are people in corporate capacity that are able to take your estate as a result of them taking advantage of the corporate capacity based upon the assumed fact that they have the legitimate justification to take your property based upon the legal presumption that could be proven otherwise based upon that which is legal fiction but has been taken to be true in regards to the purpose and intent why the legal fiction was created, to do the very thing that this brother is complaining about, which all of us are complaining about, but don't have a remedial set in place to do it. Let's hear it. Tell me I'm lying.
In New York, and the problem is buildings like this going up. How the hell can a one bedroom in this building cost $3,350 in flat Flatbush, Brooklyn. Just think about it. How much money you have to make to afford a building like this in the hood? They say 30% of your monthly income should go to rent. So in order for me to afford a building like this, I gotta be making at least $11,100 a month. How many transit workers, teachers, police officers, firefighters, and other city workers can really afford that? None. How about this building right here on Linden Boulevard? If you want a 2-bedroom, you gotta be paying $4,000 a month. Who could really afford that as a city worker? None. I can guarantee you, no middle class landlords own those buildings. Crazy thing about it is, for that price, you're getting an apartment the size of a closet. The middle class is not leaving New York to buy mansions. They're leaving New York because it's cheaper to rent a house.
Okay, let's run that back a second. But look at that. Look at what he's saying. Buildings going up by what we call land surveyors. Okay, construction companies. Okay, corporate builders. All right, they are creating these buildings. All right, without it even being recorded on the record that there is, in fact, a owner. Okay? The only person that has an interest in it, it was a result of the eminent domain power, or the acquisition power, or the any other power that the state allows them, which is to take property, but compensate them. But how are you being compensated for the property when you're not in the same capacity that they're in, which is a corporate capacity, okay? These are corporations, these are companies, these are organizations, okay, who are on the record, for the record, in regards to their interest in the property, which is an encumbered interest, all right? They can't have an encumbered interest until you rent that property, okay? Whether it's leasing or mortgaging, they can't have an interest encumbered until you rent it. Whether you're in New York and New Jersey. New York, the statute is different, but in New Jersey, it's Title 46, okay? All right? This is how they allow fee simple transfer of your inheritable estate, which is supposed to be entail, which in New Jersey, statutorily, it's preserved, okay? And the only way you can inherit that is through your corporate capacity affiliated with our corporate capacity as members of what? The corporation soul. That goes back into what? Time immemorial. How I know it, let's play back again, and then I'll prove it.
Y'all want to know the real rent crises in New York and the problem? It's buildings like this going up. How the hell can a 1-bedroom in this building cost $3,350 in Flatbush, Brooklyn? Just think about it. How much money you have to make to afford a building like this in the hood? They say 30% of your monthly income should go to rent. So in order for me to afford a building like this, I gotta be making at least $11,100 a month. How many transit workers, teachers, police officers, firefighters, and other city workers can really afford that? None. How about this building right here on Linden Boulevard? If you want a 2-bedroom, you gotta be paying $4,000 a month. Who could really afford that as a city worker? None. I can guarantee you, no middle class landlords own those buildings. Crazy thing about it is, for that price, you're getting an apartment the size of a closet. The middle class is not leaving New York to buy mansions. They're leaving New York because it's cheaper to... Y'all want to...
Okay? We're all in that same situation, especially if you're in Middlesex County. Okay? How do we fix this problem? Okay? How do we fix this problem? Not as natural people, because natural people can't fix this problem because you're not dealing with natural people in regards to the one causing the problem. You're dealing with corporations that have a corporate capacity. All right? Only spooks can fight spooks. Okay? All right? You must understand that. All right? So in order to understand a spook, a good spook that is that spook to be related to Lord or God. Okay? The fiction, okay, legally recognized in the eyes of the laws today, all right? That is the corporation soul, which was established by King Edgar the Peaceful, which was one person, okay? the person behind me. Okay? And for that, in order to understand that, now you must understand the past. Okay? You must understand the past. We'll close out on him and we'll go more into him in part 3. Okay? Once again, leave your name, your address. If you want to leave your phone number, I'll give you a call back in regards to setting up your entry into our marvelous house. Okay? Check it out. Here's a complete standalone lesson for each and every one of you. Written cleanly and coherently, tying King Edgar, the Peaceful, decentralization of New Jersey's property law, dual corporation sole doctrine, all relevant statutes and case law into one unified teaching tool. Nothing essential is left out, brothers and sisters. Nothing. All right? Lesson. King Edgar the Peaceful decentralized the authority and the modern corporation sole in New Jersey via decentralization of the law by secularizing the religious law into civil law. Okay? So this lesson purpose, all right, is to explain how the decentralized legal structure established under King Edgar the Peaceful, way back in the 10th century, directly informs and supports the modern New Jersey framework of government. Okay? That's what you're going to learn in these lessons. Okay? Very important. So please register. Okay? Name, number, and address. This lesson purpose is to explain how, once again, the decentralized legal structure established under our Jesus Christ, known as King Edgar the Peaceful, which I'm the reincarnation of because I'm teaching you this, all right? Taught by him because I'm teaching, I learned from him, okay? And he ain't even there, all right? And it links directly to the modern day. All this associated property ownership, religious corporations under our corporation sole, which we are, public recording systems, constructed notice, and the continuity of office and possessions. This is why I say entry is free, but obligation is not. Okay? This lesson demonstrates that New Jersey's decentralized system is not an anomaly, but a continuation of our older Anglo-ecclesiastical legal traditions. Brothers and sisters, yes they are. 1. King Edgar the Peaceful from 959 to 975 was the legal foundation of the common law. Okay? Who was King Edgar? King Edgar unified England not by force, but by the administrative order, law, and church governance. We just read it for ourselves from Wikipedia. He ruled that what we now call counties, back then were called shires and hundreds, which is based upon local jurisdiction. Okay? That gave the courts jurisdiction to hear matters of those who were within the jurisdiction of the hundreds or shires, now called counties. Okay? Under the authority of the officers acting in their capacities as lawyers, magnates, clerks, back then called bishops and abbots under ecclesiastical laws, okay? Under the customary laws preserved locally, now through secularization called civil law. Edgar did not centralize land ownership or religious authority in the crown. Instead, he introduced, he reinforced the law, okay? He didn't say what the law was. He said how the law should be administered. Very important. He didn't say what the law was. He said how the law would be administered. Because if the law is not administered right, it can be administered wrong. And we know that continuity is based upon order without legitimacy, without law, without what's just, without what's correct. Nonetheless, it will continue, and the opposite of order is what? Chaos. Okay? What remains? So instead, he reforced what? Local land holdings, the ecclesiastical control of church property, and the continuity of office beyond the individual. This is called successorship. Not just his office, but members of the corporation sold their office. 2. Edgar's core legal principles. 1. The decentralized authority. Under Edgar, land records were local, going back to the record. First in time, first in right. Okay? First in time, first in right. And we'll go further into that in other lessons. Okay? Under Edgar's, land records were local. Possession mattered. So in order for you to prove that you were in lawful possession of property, it had to be on the record. Okay? Authority flowed from the office, not personality. Okay? So your personality, it didn't matter. Okay? The authority flowed from the office as a result of the tenure acting in the capacity in regard to preserving the right to possession, which was preserved by what? The record. Okay? Now, why does this matter? This mirrors modern New Jersey systems. Once again, this mirrors modern New Jersey's legal system, administrative system, framework, structure, skeleton. Okay? Why? These are recorded where? On the county level. Not the state. Counties, shires, or hundreds. Courts rely on what? Local public records. Okay? Titles follow the instruments, not executive approval. Once again, title follows the instrument. The instrument that denotes to the possession that can only be recorded on the record in regards to the proof. First in time, first in right. This is parallel to New Jersey Revised Annotated Statute, which is due secularization, which is New Jersey Revised Statute 46:7-5, which is the title governing property. All right? Based upon New Jersey Statute Annotated 47:1-1, which is called the public record notice to the world. Okay? Notice to the world. 2. Church property was held by the office, not the man. You hear that? So your natural person does not matter. You're in a capacity of a legal fiction, an angel acting in the capacity based upon the grantor who allowed you to act in that capacity, which is in fact the king, the head officer of the corporation that's legal in the eyes of law, that cannot be challenged in the eyes of law, according to Title 16:1-28. Okay? Which allow us to act in the capacity without even going to the historical purpose of the tenure that we hold. That allow us to maintain, to preserve interest under Title 46, which is church property that was held by the office, not a man. Ecclesiastical lands were held by what? Bishop, I'm saying it wrong. Bishop, I'm going to say bishops. The abbacy, and the church office itself. Okay, so the bishopric, the abbacy, and the church office itself. For the ecclesiastical congregation is different from the canon offices is different. Okay, when the bishop died, property did not pass to heirs. It stayed with the office. Okay, it does not belong to the office, sir. It belongs to the crown. Okay, the officer worked in the capacity of the office, which is a tenure, is a station. Okay, this is the historical roots of what we now call today, under 16:1-28, a corporation sole. How we know it? Right here. The modern day statutory expression of the ecclesiastical origin of the office of a bishop, okay, of anybody of the King's Royal Courts, including him, is now preserved under New Jersey Revised Statute 16:1-28, which authority of a corporation so to act in that capacity to sue and be sued in regard to property that's preserved by the legislative authority that allows it to not be extinguished or ignored based upon the interest that has been preserved by the legislation, not just Title 46, which governs property, but under Title 16, which is also a part of our religious authority in our capacity, okay? Which is the power to manage, convey, encumber property. We know encumber means to allow it or convey it or to transfer, okay? 3. Continuity office. King Edgar's system required 1. Succession, 2. Stability, and 3. Preservation of our religious mission. We read our mission to you. Okay? Not personality. It's not belief. It's office continuity. Okay? It's not a belief. Okay? It's not an assumption. It's not a presumption. Why? Because that would be based upon what we think is a fact, but not in fact true. All right? What's true is that we are a legitimate legal fiction that's recognized in the eyes of law in regards to our capacity to preserve our interest in property as statutorily sound. Okay? How we know that? The modern doctrine of the office in regards to the continuity of the office in regards to our right to succession, stability, and the preservation of religious mission, which is to maintain the property that's preserved, is under 46:3-15. That's the donus conditional plus, a statute passed by Edward I, okay, of the Plantagenets in the Crown, secularized into civil law, and supported by case law, Anderson versus Hunterdon Land Trust, 287 New Jersey Superior 15 Appellate Division, 1996. Possession remains continuous despite changes in the title holder. You hear that? We're going to go in depth about that. The title holder, the one on the record. That means you, my brothers and sisters. Those deeds in lieu of possession that you have in the interest or property that you now have is you are the holder. You are the grantor. Okay? But you're the grantor in your natural capacity, all right? And in your natural capacity, you have no say-so, okay? In a corporate world, all right? 3. Transition to American law, including New Jersey. Once again, 3. Transition to American law, including New Jersey. Follow along, brothers and sisters. Follow along. Hold that thought. Correction. Don't leave your number. Leave your email address. Okay, leave your email address so I can be able to contact you. Okay, not your phone number, your name, your address, and your email address. Okay, just in case I need to send some formal correspondence. 3. Transition to American law, including New Jersey. Anglo ecclesiastical law survives. When English law crossed the Atlantic, it carried, point 1, county-based land recording, which was called shires and hundreds, back when our ancestors called it. It carried church property protection, okay? Decentralized administration. New Jersey has never abandoned this structure, this framework, okay? Very important. It didn't go anywhere. 4. New Jersey is a decentralized system by design. A. Property recording systems allow each county to maintain its own records, okay? First in time, first in right. No centralized land registry. Every county, every municipality, every state deals with their own recording system because it's now decentralized. Okay? Very important. So in our capacity under 16:1-28, it goes back to the secularized law, which is ecclesiastical law, for us to act in the capacity as our forefathers did, all right, under our noble titles as members of the royal court. Okay? You must remember. Okay? New Jersey has that same decentralized system that protects us to act in that same capacity when we teach it online, when we speak among ourselves. But when we go into those courts, we have to speak it in a narrow sense because the door is only cracked this much. Okay? So we have to speak in an intelligent tone to get a favorable reply. So if that, then we have to speak the decentralized talk, the decentralized language, okay? Based upon how the system is running today, all right? That would be his downfall, okay? New Jersey is a decentralized system by design. Property recording is done by each county who maintains its own record, which gives the court jurisdiction. No centralized land registry. Recording gives constructive notice. That's Title 47, okay? Notice to the world, okay? Notice to the world. We must understand. Case law. Furnival versus East Jersey Title Company. Recording preserves priority of title. First in time, first in line. Once again, first in time, first in line. Okay? First in time, first in line. Clark versus Ringer, 102 New Jersey Equity Court, that's Chancery, 1927. Constructive notice binds all persons. This is identical in principle to Edgar in England. Did you hear that? Why is this important? Courts rely on a local record. Judge will ask you, 1, is there a deed? 2, is it recorded? 3, who holds the capacity? So it's not the person, it's the capacity, my brothers and sisters. You hold a deed, it's recorded, but you're missing out on the third part. What capacity do you hold the deed, and how was that deed recorded? Was it in your natural capacity or your corporate capacity? If it's your natural capacity, then guess what? They control that because spooks control it. They're looking at it in their corporate capacity, so you're behind the 8 ball. They do not ask, did the state approve this? They do not ask, is this doctrine centralized? Because they have a decentralized system. Titles follows the record. Capacities follow the instrument. You hear that? So if you're a natural person following the instrument on the record, then your capacity on the record is a natural person, and the person who claimed interest on the record, according to Title 46, is a spook, a corporation, okay? Which now has priority on the record, okay? Very important because they're tied to Title 46, but the encumbrance or the interest that they have, according to Title 46, is the only result of you giving it to them in your natural capacity because you volunteered, you pledged it when you asked or you adopted or you accepted that loan they gave you, which is the third-party interest. You must understand. Part 5, corporation sold, the then and the now. Historical functions. Under King Edgar, the corporation sold. 1, the church held land. Okay? If the church held land and the church is responsible to obedience to God, i.e., the obligation, and the church is free to all one, so entry is free, but obligations is not, because God's law is the supreme law of the land, just now applied in the civil way. So, in order for it to be applied in the civil way, and only person to enforce that law in the civil way, you must have a corporate capacity to do so, and not a natural person, because natural person do not go to God, because God will not see him, will not talk to him, because God don't have a voice, God don't have a face, he don't have anything other than the immortality, but yet he still remains what? The legal fiction. Okay? Modern Jersey recognition in lieu of capacity to sue and be sued, own property, protect property, in lieu of the preservation of the power granted to you under Title 16, rights stated under the charge of Great Britain, safe from appeal, and act to incorporate trustee of a religious society for property held in corporation in place thereof. This is under 60:1-43.9. Grants power to manage and convey the property, but you must have Title 46 running in sequence with that. Case law to support that is what? McDermott versus Monmouth County, New Jersey Revised, New Jersey Superior Court, 241, 1971 case. Religious corporate property is what? Protected. In the State of Smith, 217, New Jersey Superior Court, also in Appellate Division, 1987, corporations sold property immune from what? Personal creditors. Did you hear that? When you say corporation sold, we ain't talking about the crown, we ain't talking about the king, because you're looking at it from historical, which takes a broader evaluation, which automatically comes up what we call consider frivolous, because it does not associate, it does not adopt to the secularized process involving ecclesiastical protection, going back to the origin of the corporation sold, which is King Edward the Peaceful. Okay? Very important to understand that, because if you don't, then your property will not have immunity. It will be subject to third-party creditors, etc. So this is a direct continuity, not a legal fiction. Okay? This is a direct, not a legal fiction. The legal fiction allows you to operate in that capacity to continue the continuity of those that was done by the previous successors at law, i.e. legal fictions. Okay? 6. Why missions, attachment, and public teachings matter. Under Edgar's legitimacy came from visible church activity, public instructions, and use of land aligned with the mission. So this is why we have a website. This is why we incorporated to promote our mission, okay? And where? New Jersey. Courts test this reality, not labels, okay? So you can call yourself whatever you want to call you. If you don't live up to the name, guess what? You can pierce that corporate veil. So our mission attached to our activity and our capacity assures us and assures them that in fact the entity do exist. Property is used for corporate purposes and the activity is continuous. Do we understand that? It defeats the alter ego claim that this is a sham entity allegation and that we're using this particular corporation or capacity as a corporation for fraudulent conveyance attacks. Did you hear that? You hear that? The only reason why we will prevail is because of what? 7. Constructive notice under Edgar's public order under Title 47, which is the modern interpretation of the ecclesiastical law that governs any law that governs the territory, i.e. the decentralized system. Okay? Edgar's governed through public notice. What is a public notice? Declarations, assemblies, church proclamations. All this is codified and protected under Title 47. Notice to the world. Okay? Notice to the world. Once recorded, all persons are bound, whether you know it or not. Ignorance is no defense. Clark versus Bringer, 1970, Furnival, 1970, same rule. New century. Hear that? New century. And Section 8. This all works together to establish, support, and stabilize the continuity of the framework established by King Edgar, and we all need to be coherent to that system established by King Edgar when it was decentralized or centralized. Why? Because New Jersey remains decentralized. 3. Corporation souls bridges what? That gap between ecclesiastical continuity and legal law that protects the continuity. 4. County recordings gives us the constructive notice based upon the preserved interest we have in it that's equitable, which is based upon or can be promoted or be enforced through remedial requests by way of what we call declaratory or injunctive relief, supported by case law, which enforces the substance over form. All right. Our mission clearly shows that it helps defeat personal assets characterization. Okay. This is not clever law. It is the old law applied what? Correctly. Okay. Applied correctly. Final teaching principles and the takeaway for all that was said today. The modern New Jersey corporation soul does not invent authority, it preserves it, exactly as Jesus Christ, King Edgar the Peaceful, intended. Through office, record, continuity, and public notice, not centralized permission. Is New Jersey a decentralized system? Short answer, yes. New Jersey operates as a highly decentralized system, especially in property, courts, and local governance. But it's not purely decentralized. It is a hybrid with strong local control under a unified state framework. And we're going to that in our next lesson on part 3 of what remains of the system when the collapse takes place. Part 3, potential inheritors. And that means you. So with that, I'm going to stop my screen. I'm going to greet you as I always have greeted you. And that is in the love of King Edgar the Peaceful. Once again, leave your name in the comments, your address, your email, so that we can start these lectures. We can do it privately, or we can do it together. It makes no difference to me. But you must act in that capacity in lieu of the restoration of your estate. That is our mission. That is our goal, and that is our objective. And with that, I'm going to greet you as I always greeted you, and that's the love of King Edgar. Peace.